My new pillow design involves 4 long seams that need to be mattress stitched. So this is a good time for a demo. We have increases and decreases here. There's one of the slants caused by them. And then there's a straight spot. And here is the other slant. They were all done with the full-fashioned increase or decrease. So the outer column of stitches is straight. The action took place a stitch in. So we can still use a neat seam, a mattress stitch seam. Edge column, next in, go under the bar that falls between 2 rows of stitches. You've got this heart shape, a heart shape above it. If I go down into one heart shape and up into the next one, that's the right position. Over here, same deal, down, up. Once you get good at it, you can sometimes do 2 or 3 stitches in a row without pulling the yarn tight, but it's best not to overdo that because what you'll get is little loops. Down, up. Now let's see, it can get confusing. You can see where the last stitch went in though. And if you get confused, tug on it and look, there is the next bar. So I would go in, not there, but right above the next bar. And then when I get to the end of the increases, it will be slightly simpler. The process is just the same, but the edge is less confusing to look at. I've sewn about another 1.5 inches of the seam, and now we're into the straight area. I can easily see that my yarn came up in this stitch, so we go down, up, down, up, and you can see that it's getting simpler. Of course, as I work, I have to unroll the edge. See me doing it? Every time, because that's the nature of stockinette. That edge is going to roll. But I can pretty easily follow my column of stitches because I can see where I came up last and go straight into the stitch above it. It's not confusing once you know what to look for. I'm going to try to do a few stitches in a row to demonstrate that it can be done, but also why it's tricky. You can see that any of these yarn ends or loops might like to get in the way and get knotted into my seam as it's being made. So you can't do a whole bunch of stitches in a row without pulling tight, or at least I can't. Perhaps you can. So here is the completed seam, and you can see why it's such a great seam for good contact. Even when I pull on it, all you see is more yarn. You can't see into the openings of the fabric. Now for the end of this particular project, the ends are purposely smaller by about 1 inch than the ends of the bone-shaped pieces. So we're purposely easing in. Therefore, no such thing as mattress stitch is possible for 2 reasons. For part of the time, we will be matching stitches to rows. These 2 pieces, stitches will match stitches. But when I come around to this next bone-shaped shaped piece, stitches will match to rows. So a counted thing, such as the mattress stitch, is not effective. So a quick bonus here that doesn't get a whole video of its own on easing using whip stitch. Whip stitch is this motion going around the edge. And I'm purposely easing this end, the big one, so as to match the side of the actual end and stretching the side of the actual end. I've got the fabric aligned where I think that will work. I'm going to take tiny whip stitches. Each one moves only a stitch away from the last one. It's right now we're matching stitches to stitches, only we're not, because then I would need to count and do the first pair, second pair, third pair, and I'd end up with some stuck out at the other end. And I'm trying to get it all eased in instead. So the side towards me is the side that's getting eased. We'll have more stitches if I work behind the cast on or bind off on the side I'm looking at, the longer of the sides. So that's what I'm doing. There's the whip stitch seam, and I should have mentioned that all the cast-ons and bind-offs in this pattern are chain stitches, so that when this pillow gets stuffed and this end gets pulled on, it's nice and sturdy. It's quite visible. That's okay with me for this pillow, but it's nice and firm. And that easing business is to create a gentler curve on the end of the bone shape. I wanted a seam here that would make a ridge that defined the end of the bone shape. If you don't like that look, of course, you could do this from the opposite side. In other words, work from the inside of the two fabrics, and then the ridge would be on the inside and the seam would be just as sturdy. If this pattern interests you, I actually have two versions. The loom knitting version is up on Ravelry for sale, and the machine knitting version will appear in Country Knitting of Maine News and Views sometime in 2020. 3 gauges are presented there so that just about any knitting machine may be used.